Hi, I am Dr. Claire Del Cambry, and I am the owner of Hey Babe Physical Therapy and Wellness. And I am going to talk to you today about how to do perineal desensitization in pregnancy preparing for birth, because it is different than everything else that's available on the internet. We're going to start with reviewing what the perineum is with this picture from the Pelvic Global Academy. So if we look here, we're looking at the perineum. My mouse is running over the perineum. If you look at it, this is the muscle that goes from sits bone to sits bone. It is what separates the vaginal opening from the anus. And so that's what we're looking at whenever we're talking about the perineum. Now, whenever we're thinking about the perineum with birth, what we want to do is prevent anything greater than a grade 2 tear. So a grade 1, grade 2, or no tearing, they all kind of heal the same. There's some people who have a grade 2 who end up with like a little bit of scar tissue, but even that is pretty easy to desensitize. But what we want to prevent is the grade 3 and the grade 4 tears. So a grade 3 goes most of the way to the anus, and then the grade 4 goes all the way through the anus. And so that's what we're trying to avoid when we do the perineal desensitization. I call it perineal desensitization because we don't actually need to super stretch the muscle. Stretching it a little bit is helpful, but stretching it a ton, kind of like what you're seeing on all the TikTok videos where they're going in with both thumbs and pulling them at the same time and doing all of this, pushing super hard for 10 minutes every day from 36 weeks on until you give birth, in my clinical experience, is absurd, totally ridiculous. So I want to talk to y'all about what is actually happening at the perineum and what actually needs to be done. So you saw the perineum is just a straight line from sits bone to sits bone. And so that's what we need to mobilize in order to desensitize it. The reason I'm using the word desensitize and not stretch is because when you're pregnant, you have progressive overload over your pelvic floor muscles and over your perineum for 6 months. Whenever the baby starts to accumulate real mass and you start to accumulate more amniotic fluid, you have anywhere from like 10 to like 40 pounds going over your pelvic floor that wasn't there before. That's stretching it every second of every day. So whenever we're talking about perineal stretching, we don't need to make room. The room is already being made because you're pregnant. And so what we need to do is we need to help your perineum adjust and adapt to the new length. So a lot of the time, especially if it's your first pregnancy, typically the pelvic floor muscles tend to fight those changes of your pelvic floor. And so it will stay kind of tight and rigid. And that is something that we have to just educate your muscles, like, the space is available, you should use it. And that's what we're doing when we do the perineal stretching. So it's not really a massage. It definitely doesn't feel like one, but it doesn't have to be a deep, intense stretch either. For reference, to stretch a muscle, it requires like 10 minutes of sustained stretch for every day for at least 30 days to see a change in muscle length. And so we're not really changing the length of the muscle. We're just making what's already there available or accessible. So my advice is that you start doing perineal desensitization around 34 to 36 weeks of pregnancy, and you're going to do it ideally every other day for about 5 minutes or so until you no longer feel the stretch. That's what you're looking for. So I'm going to show you on the webbing of my hand what the actual stretching looks like, and what ideally you have a partner who's helping you with this, because it's very hard to reach under yourself, especially if you have a baby in the way. And so I'm going to show you on the webbing of my hand what that looks like, because this, I want you to feel it too. The webbing of your hand feels very similar to how our perineum feels. And so this is something that you can kind of feel, like you might even feel some, like the muscle might feel a little stringy at certain points. That can happen in the perineum, where there are certain parts of the perineum that are tighter than others, and it can feel almost like a guitar string. That fades away as the muscle warms up with prolonged stretch. So things that you're going to need: you will need lube. You will need a comfortable place for you to lie and a comfortable place for your partner to be. Now, typically, if your partner is a woman, she's going to be totally fine using her index finger. If your partner is a man, they need to use their thumb. Generally, men have more developed gross motor movement and women have more developed fine motor movement. And so if a man is doing the perineal stretching, a lot of the time they are quick to put their thumb down. And so you need to explain to them to be very gentle, to go very slow, because the other thing we want to consider is that your muscles are going to be fighting the pressure. And so we need to give them an opportunity to relax into the new pressure and then apply a little bit more. And so it's a little bit of like a step-by-step process. So what I educate my patients and their partners to do is to imagine your vaginal opening is a clock. 12 o'clock would be your clitoris and 6 o'clock would be the very bottom center of your vaginal opening. Whenever we're doing perineal desensitization, you only need to use like 5, 4, and 3 o'clock or 7, 8, and 9 o'clock. Anything above that, likely not super helpful, especially with like an untrained person doing this. If you have your pelvic floor doing this, pelvic floor physical therapist doing this, it's totally different. But whenever you're doing this as an untrained individual, I recommend just sticking with kind of 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock and then or 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. 6 o'clock you can skip. 6 o'clock is a tendon. And so the tendon doesn't really stretch much. Most of the mobility you're going to get is going to be off to the corners. Another way you can think of it is like if you're looking at the vaginal opening, you're just applying pressure down toward the butt cheek, just going toward, like it's always on the diagonal, right? So you're just going toward the butt cheek as opposed to straight to the side, up, or straight down. So just to the corners. I recommend if you're catching this video early enough, let's say you're catching this before 30 weeks or so, you can probably try this yourself first to see how it feels. If not, and if you're nervous to have your partner do it, you can always go see a pelvic floor physical therapist and they can teach you how to do it and they can teach your partner how to do it as well. But basically you want to find kind of the soft part of the perineum and just apply really gentle pressure there with a lubed hand or finger. Okay. It has to be lubed. It's only fair. It's only right if it's lubed. Okay. So from there, you'll apply very gentle pressure. Whenever I give the example to people, if you were to go 100%, go 5% of that. And that's where you start. So don't go 100%, just assume what that's going to be and do 5%, which is going to be lighter than anybody thinks it should be. But some days your baby goes through a growth spurt, and when that happens, your pelvic floor gets a little bit tighter. Also, if you just were more active the day before, if you didn't get good sleep, all of that can contribute to a tighter pelvic floor. So you want to be very gentle when you're first starting because we never know the landscape we're encountering when we first start. So very, very gentle. And then if you're the pregnant person, tell your partner, okay, you can apply 5% more pressure. And I recommend going to 5 to 10% increments and just say, okay, pause there. Please don't move. The reason you want your partner to be very comfortable is because what you don't want them to do is leverage themselves on your perineum as they shift positions. And so let them know ahead of time. If you need to change positions, please remove your hand first. So note that all of this is about being gentle and kind to your perineum. We are not applying excessive pressure here. We're applying gentle, desensitizing pressure that warms up the muscle and allows you to access the link that's already there. So gentle pressure. Your goal is to get until you can't move any further, but that might take a couple weeks. It might happen the first time, and then the next time it doesn't happen. That's kind of normal too. If you don't get there every time, that's fine. If you get there a couple of times even, we know that's available. The other thing that you can do is use the strategy when you're in labor. So when you're in labor, have your partner stretch your perineum, maybe in between contractions, but have them stretch it so that that length is already there, and that will help prevent perineal tears. They've done studies on this, and it is very effective. The studies show 36 weeks, you're doing it daily for 10 minutes every day. Generally, I haven't found that to be feasible for the average person, but every other day, 3 times a week for 5 to 10 minutes at a time has generally been very doable. And that's something that you can implement. So again, you just go super gentle over the muscle, finding the point of sensitivity. So that sensitivity, it could feel like pulling, stretching, tension, burning, stinging, ripping, tearing. Now, if you're experiencing the burning, stinging, ripping, tearing, it's one thing to feel like a little bit of that, maybe like a 4 out of 10 on a scale of 0 to 10. That would be like my maximum, but even still, I would probably have them back off till it's about a 2 out of 10. The reason why is because if they're pushing and it's really uncomfortable or painful, your muscle's going to fight that, and then we're not achieving what we're aiming to achieve, which is desensitizing the muscle and achieving more length, right? Or available length. So that's something to just keep in mind whenever you're doing your perineal stretching. I recommend doing it on one side for about 30 seconds to a minute, and then switching sides for about 30 seconds to a minute, and doing that again on one side and again on the other. Usually you'll do this 2 to 3 times on each side. Some days the length will just be there. And if it's already there, what are we doing? You're done. You can skip it. And on days where it's not there, then you'll just go for a few minutes on each side. Generally, people just prefer to alternate sides. All of this, show your partner this video so that they know what to expect. Perineums change every day. They can be very sensitive and very uncomfortable with too much pressure. So be really gentle to start. But the goal is to get to the point where you can't move any further. There's bone there, you can't get any more room, and that's how you'll know your perineum is relaxing consistently, is that you can get there usually a couple times in a week. So that's the goal. I hope this helps.